Welcome to the Ambitious Introvert podcast, created especially for introverts, empaths, and highly sensitive entrepreneurs to help you build, grow, and scale a successful, sustainable business. I'm your host, Emma-Louise Parks, business and mindset coach for ambitious introverts. After 17 years working as an air traffic controller, the ultimate fast-paced, high-stimulus, extrovert-friendly role, my mission now is to show introverts that they too can create big results and success because of who they are, not in spite of it. I focus on introvert-friendly business and marketing strategy to help you switch overwhelm for clarity, confidence, and clients. Hello, happy May. Welcome back to the Ambitious Introvert podcast. I'm Emma-Louise, and today I'm chatting to the amazing Julia DeWolfe. Now, Julia and I had been in each other's orbits for quite a while, as my good friend Jordan King actually works with Julia and I've mentioned her name so many times. So when I was looking for a guest to talk about today's topic, she was the first person that came to mind. Jordan connected us and we became friends, and now we have this great conversation, which is all about cycle-syncing. So Julia is a life and business coach. She works with entrepreneurs and uses modalities such as CBT, EFT, the same as I do, and she's trauma-informed. And she blends that with cycle-syncing. So really helping them to optimize their own hormonal cycle, understanding the different phases of the cycle, what type of work within our business is best suited to it, and how you can track it and start really using it as an empowering tool rather than feeling low energy or feeling like you aren't doing enough or any of the stories that we tell ourselves. So I really love this conversation because Julia's super open about everything. She shares all of the different things, and you will gain so much just from listening to this that you can already start to apply. Now, I've been really open before about how I'm fairly stable hormonally, but there are a couple of days each month that I do really feel it. And tracking my cycle and understanding that and understanding how the hormones work has really been very permission given to me to go, oh, it's okay. Like whatever I'm thinking, it doesn't mean anything. It's just my hormones. And a day or two later, it's gone and I'm back to normal. So I hope that you enjoy this. I hope that you find it informative and permission given and enjoy my chat with Julia. If this is something that you are intrigued about, if you're thinking, I want to really optimize my energy in my business, I want to be able to use tools and modalities like this so that I can continue to grow and scale, then I would love to invite you to apply to the Quiet Power Mastermind. We kick off in June and we've already had some spaces filled. So there's an aspect within the mastermind of tapping into your personal power. And I think this conversation just goes so well with that. So there are numerous ways that I support clients in this. It could be through their human design. It could be through understanding their zone of genius and staying in that wherever possible. It could be their own unique vision and values for their life business. But of course, mindset and energy is an overriding theme for any entrepreneur, especially for introverted entrepreneurs, where we are looking to conserve our energy and really utilize our time, but still be able to scale and increase our revenue, increase our impact. So cycle-syncing is one of the things that I talk about a lot with my clients. And it's really just one of those strings that we can add to the bow in making sure that we're doing the best things to enable us to grow our business, but still feel good in the process. So if you are looking for these types of refinements, now you're looking to go a little bit deeper, you're really looking to scale that revenue without putting more time and energy in, then Quiet Power could be for you. I'm going to pop the link in the show notes with all the details. However, it is being updated all the time. I'm going to be sharing more in the next few weeks about some of the different ways I'm supporting clients within Quiet Power this round and some of the expert support coaches, guest experts that I've got coming in to add to it as well. So if that piques your interest, please feel free to fill the application out. I'd love to have a chat with you. And for now, on with the episode. Enjoy. Julia, hi.
Hi.
Hello. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me.
This is an exciting conversation because we've been connected for a while and we've got tons of people in common. And, I've got friends that are clients of yours and all of that good stuff. And I feel like we've gone back and forth with voice notes and different things. We have a love of IKEA that we've discussed and various other things. Yeah. So I'm really excited to chat with you for selfish reasons, not just because we're going to talk about something that's super useful to my audience as well. But so thank you. Thank you for your time.
I'm so excited to be here. I love talking about this. I love chatting all things like understanding ourselves and connecting with your rhythm, especially when we may have things that sap our energy or kind of understanding all of that as entrepreneurs. So I'm thrilled. I'm absolutely thrilled.
And to me, it's everything really is about refinement and optimization as I'm coming into the 4th year of business. And it's not about burning things down and building up again, but it's like, I guess those 1% gains, where can we improve things? Just that little bit, where can we be a little bit more efficient? Where can this work a little bit better for us? And that is where I think something like cycle-synching that we're going to talk about today is really, really powerful, because if we're just following a calendar and trying to map things out, of course we can get it done. Of course it works, but it can feel hard. And if we're trying to do tasks that maybe aren't aligned with our energy at that stage of the month, I've done it and it's just like going through, like mud, and you're like, oh, and then you flip it around and you just change a few things to certain days and, you're flying. So as introverts, as my audience are, I just think it's so important for us to manage our energy and have that cognizance of it and make those empowered decisions to be able to, like I say, just be 1% more efficient or just save a little bit more energy and feel like a human at the end of the day, right?
Absolutely. And it really comes down to acceptance. It's acceptance of your energy. It's acceptance of your peopling energy. It's acceptance of your actual energy and mental energy too. And so instead of forcing ourselves to show up exactly the same every single day, we're allowing ourselves to just accept it. This is how I'm feeling. This is a predictable pattern of how I feel. How can I work with that instead of against it? It's a strength versus a weakness focused approach.
So I think it's become more of a thing, definitely, in the last few years, and people are more aware of it. It's a discussion I have with a lot of my clients and Kate Northrup and Do Less, and that whole movement has really brought it to the forefront, which is great. But for anyone that's listening that doesn't really know too much about it, or they kind of like, oh, I've heard of it, but I've never really dabbled. Could you give us like a high level overview without going like too far into the science?
Sure. Yeah. So your cycle is happening every single month. We're roughly on a month. This is a hormonal cycle that you move through, and you have predictable stages that happen at different points in your cycle. And along with those predictable stages, the hormones change our energy levels. It can factor in with our mood. And often we think of this in a negative light where people will be like, oh, I'm just so hormonal. Well, we're hormonal all the time. So it's really just understanding what's happening when in your cycle, and then tracking what are your interests, what things feel easy for you at different stages in your cycle, and then bringing some intentionality to that, where now we're starting to schedule things in at a point that it matches up with our cycle, or understanding, why is this so hard for me? And then when you can look at it and say, oh, it's because of this, now it's not a personal failing. Now it's just a fact of, oh, of course that's hard for me because this isn't the right time for me to be doing that. It's like if you were trying to make phone calls at midnight, you would realize, oh, nobody's answering the phone. This isn't like oh, what's the matter with me? Everybody must hate taking my call. It's midnight. People are sleeping. So it's just realizing and adjusting tasks to fit at the time that you're going to be doing your best and feeling your best for that task.
And like so much of the productivity systems, I'm going to say, that we follow and the conventions that we follow in our patriarchal society, this is not really something that's taken into account, right? We look at productivity on a 24-hour basis. Everything is about day to day to day. And, I've I've read so many productivity books and, get stuff done and this is how you do it and all of these different ways. And, some of them are good, some not so good and, each to their own. But there was nothing until I read Do Less that was like, start looking at it in cycles. And it's so interesting because I say this, we are such cyclical beings. I love seasons, I'm obsessed with seasons. Like I couldn't live near the equator and not have seasons. I think it would just freak me out. And I love that. And I love that feeling. And it's just that on a smaller scale, right? We're just talking about every 28 or so days versus 4 times a year.
Right, exactly. And it feels really good. It feels so good when we do that. Everything in our life is kind of cyclical. Even tasks are quite cyclical. If you think of laundry, you're never really done with laundry. It's a cyclical task. And so once we start to add the idea of a cycle in, so often what happens is it's just this massive sense of relief instead of feeling like, oh, why is this never done? Or why is this never working? When we embrace, well, yeah, it's going to come around. It's going to come back because it's a cycle. It just removes so much pressure and it allows us to enjoy the tasks or the time.
I had a friend who read Do Less. I'm going to link Do Less in the show notes because I feel like we're going to reference it just because it's easy to. And there is a diagram in there for planning and it's a circle. There's literally a cycle and it's having your day and mapping your day out, I think it is, as in a circular fashion. And she said it blew her mind in the best way because she thought in terms of a linear timeline and she always felt like she could see the end and it was running out and it felt so subjective. And seeing that circle, she just said it was just so expansive and just gave her so much permission.
It's incredible what happens when you take an endpoint out of the picture. It's been the biggest relief for me, especially I talk a lot about getting diagnosed with ADHD when I was 30 and how for much of my life, there were lots of things that were difficult. I was powering on through because also several people in my family are neurodivergent. This is what we knew. And that was just the way things were. And so there was that feeling of constantly kind of racing the clock and time blindness and different things like that. And I really think that my understanding of cycle-syncing, then when I paired that up with this understanding of, yeah, I was looking at things differently because of what my brain was chasing. Having that full and complete picture, it totally changed everything where now it wasn't this deadline. It was just like, no, this will come back around. We will remember that we want to do this. It'll be okay. It's safe for us to let go of such a tight grip and instead go with the flow.
Go with the flow. I love it. That's exactly what I was thinking. So could you give us a brief overview of the different parts of our cycle? And I mean, maybe a little bit of what's happening in the body, but not too in depth, but more like how can we utilize it? How is it a positive time for us to get certain things done?
Sure. Yeah. So I love that with cycle-syncing, it is a positive focus because so often as women, we're only thinking of when we have our period, maybe there's PMS, and everybody has kind of treated it as like this part of our life. And it's really not. It's really not. It's not necessarily the funnest, especially if we're struggling with different hormonal things, or maybe we have PCOS or endometriosis, or just lots of things can make our cycle, as we think of it, seem like a dread. But the more we understand it, the more we can accept it and the more we can love it. So there's 4, main parts. There's other things that are happening inside of the cycle, but the main events. First, your cycle starts on day 1 of your period. This begins a new cycle. So when you have your period, obviously your body is cleaning out. We may feel uncomfortable or miserable, but on the positive side, what's happening is as your body's cleaning out, your brain is also in a spot where you're like, let's clear this stuff out. It's a very reflective time. If you think about how we often feel, we usually want to be to ourselves. We're not really excited about lots of social events happening, maybe not a lot of like people facing things. But I personally have found I have some of my best ideas at that stage of my cycle. That's when I'm really starting to get a lot of clarity around what went well over the last month or so. What am I excited about? What are some things that I've been feeling stuck around? I start to get a lot of I could do it like this, or I could do it like that. So during that stage of your cycle, it's a great time to be setting some goals, be thinking about how you want things to feel over this next piece of your cycle, and just kind of reflecting on how things are feeling. As we are in this stage where we have our period, our hormones are starting to go on the upswing again. They've bottomed out for your period to start, which is where we usually feel like absolute dragging. But as they start to come on the upswing, we usually start to feel more like ourselves. We're feeling pretty content, and maybe we're embracing a little bit more slower living. And so it's a great time to think about, what matters to you, what feels good in your business and in your life right now, and what do you want more of moving forward. After your period ends, now we're moving into the follicular phase. And this is where most women feel themselves. They really feel high energy at this point. They're excited to start acting on some of those goals that they've just been setting and when they had their period. And this is just a really good time for things that maybe take more brain energy and more physical energy, where you maybe have some longer days on your schedule. You're looking at tasks that require a little bit more confidence from you. It's a good time. It's a good time because what's happening in your body is those hormones are all coming up to their peak for the real main event of your cycle, which is ovulation. And ovulation, when we ovulate, this is the sign that our cycle is actually functioning properly. That's what allows your body to say, hey, let's have a period. It's what's driving the whole cycle is ovulation. And so this is peak hormones, and this is also peak confidence. And it's over roughly a 3-day period of time. So it does move quick, but it's not the only time that it's great in the cycle. But this is a time that it's really awesome to get in front of people. If you have the option in your schedule to plan, sales calls at certain points, or if you're looking at podcast interviews or anything that you want to have your sharpest, most confident self, ovulation is a great time to do that. It's also a great time to have some conversations. If you're feeling like, no, I want to get this off my chest, the ovulation's an awesome time to start connecting some of those dots for people. After ovulation, we move into the luteal phase, and this is from ovulation till your period's going to start. So this is the stage where some PMS might pop up. Something happens right after ovulation that I have coined the luteal crisis, because your body, you have this little dip in your hormones where the hormones, everything's kind of peaked, and then they go whoosh, they dip down for a second, and then your body starts to make progesterone, which progesterone is like our chill hormone. But there's that little gap before your body's making that. And that's where across the board with my clients, when they come to me and they say, why am I even working in this business? What is going on? Everything's falling apart. I'm so bad at my job. Like, it's just this crushing, like, what am I even doing? 9 times out of 10, they're in that window of time, and it is the luteal crisis. And in a couple of days, they're going to be like, that was great. Like, this is incredible. They may get some clarity at that time, but there's just this little bottom out. And then after that, we start to move through, we kind of get into like a nesting mode where we're like, let's clear the calendar. Let's clear stuff off of our to-do list that we either don't want to do or we can get done quickly. We get a lot of clarity around what matters to us at this point, and we're getting quite a lot of things done, but then it also can turn into like a little bit of a quieter time. So that's the roundabout overview.
I love the crisis firstly, because I've experienced the crisis. But secondly, with all of my clients, when someone reaches out and they're like, I'm having a meltdown, or I feel really awful, I don't know what's going on, I'm in a funk. Like, I'm like, where are you in your cycle? What's happening with the moon? Are you sleeping well? What did you eat? Have you been socializing too much? Because introverts. Mm-hmm. All of these things, like, did you drink alcohol? Have you been moving your body? Like, that's a big one. Have you been doing your self-care and mindset practices? And then, inevitably there's something like, well, yeah, I have been out quite a lot, or, oh yeah, I haven't really exercised for a week. But a lot of the time it's really to do with their hormones and what's happening with the moon or the cosmos or something. And you can start to map it back. I always joke and say, there's a day each month that I hate my business and I want to close it down. I don't hate my business. But there's always that day. And now, like, I used to make it a really big deal. Maybe I'm so terrible. I'm so ungrateful. Why do I hate my business? Why do I feel like this? But now I know that in 2 days it's passed. And on that day, I just go, oh, it's that day. And literally, like, that's as much energetic charge as it has for me now. It's like, oh, it's that day of the month. Okay, whatever.
So much happens if we can just accept that something is the way that we feel. There's so much research around if we can accept even a negative feeling or that kind of panic, if we can say, this is what's happening. Okay, this is how I feel. Of course I feel that way because of XYZ. And we can just kind of let it exist. It removes a lot of the oomph that it could have. Now it's not something that we need to respond to. It's just something that's there. And if you can name it, normally you can tame it, right? So if we can start to put something to it, this is how I'm feeling because XYZ, this has been a drain on my energy. Like you said, think about all the outlying factors instead of just the one factor. And it's incredible. It's really incredible. You can still reach the same outcome by allowing the thing to exist and to work with it instead of forcing yourself to power through. You can still reach your dream end goal of, okay, everything works out, but it can feel a lot better along the way.
I think for so many people, we have, especially for entrepreneurs, we have that flash of inspiration, or we have a really strong feeling about something. We feel like we've got to take action like instantly. And that's where I'm always like, because we have these lulls in our hormones, in our energy, and all these different things, it's like, okay, just sit with it. Let's just sit with it for a few days. And I know people that have made huge changes in their business and then a week later gone, why did I do that? And they've got to change it all back. And I think it's just having that permission, like you say. And when we look at external factors, when we can go, oh, I didn't sleep enough, or I haven't been to the gym, or I've stopped journaling, and oh, I'm in the luteal phase. And once you can do that 2 or 3 times, it takes it away. Like you say, it's not personal. It's not you. It's just, oh, this thing is happening to me. And that's why I'm having this thought.
Yeah, exactly. And it's very empowering because that's something I've experienced in my own cycle. I started to notice there would be certain points in my cycle, especially in the luteal phase, where I would have this like looming feeling that I was forgetting something. I was forgetting something, and it was creating a lot of like fear. I was feeling quite anxious. I'd be waking up and thinking like, what is it? What is it? And it wasn't really anything. It was just that's the way that my brain was kind of patterning. I was feeling stressed. So then once I've been able to track that, now I'm not forcing myself to think, what is it? What am I forgetting? What's going on? Instead, I can actually sit with the emotion and take care of myself. I can say, no, we're safe. Everything's okay. You can actually close the loop instead of going on this adventure that isn't actually real. Our feelings tell our truth, but they don't tell the truth. So we can validate them. But we don't need to we don't need to react to those emotions all the time. So letting it be, understanding, thinking of all the factors, it's real healing is what it is.
It's so true. And, there's so much advice out there for, dismiss your feelings or choose to feel another way. And, let's not go there because obviously we are emotional beings and we do feel our feelings. But something from NLP that I use quite a lot that has been life-changing for me is just even changing the language around it. So rather than, okay, I'm sad, it's like, I feel sad. I can acknowledge that I feel sad. It doesn't make me a sad person. That doesn't have to be my identity, but I can be having a feeling on that day to feel a certain way. And it could be a completely different feeling the next day.
We're meant to feel our emotions.
Totally.
Our emotions are chemicals. But that's the thing, we're meant to feel them and they would flow, they would serve their purpose. And then we can move on. Once we start to like clamp down on them and say, I shouldn't be feeling like that. Oh no, like I'm happy. This is, I get to do this. Like it doesn't work because we're not fixing the real issue here, which is that we're forcing ourselves to do something that we're not ready for. If instead we just sit there and say, yes, I'm feeling this way, your body knows what to do. Your thought process will help you know what to do because there might be something under there that you deserve to explore. Why I always tell my clients, anger, there's always a reason for anger. I'm so angry because, and in that because is where we can figure out what you are feeling, what needs to change, what would you like to happen next? But if we just are like, oh, I shouldn't feel angry. Well, now we didn't do anything.
one of the biggest lessons for me has been patience. I have not been a very patient person in my life, not in a horrible way, but, I'm ambitious. I always want things now. I don't like to wait. And, of course, the universe has thrown all kinds of lessons at me that has forced me to slow down and wait for things. So I've kind of nailed that one now. But where the Cycle-Synching is great is previously I would have, felt low and been like, oh, I don't have the energy to, I don't know, write this launch content, and really beating myself up. Like, I'm going to get behind and it's a big deal, and make it, make a story about it. Where actually, once you are into the cycle, you understand how it works. 28 days comes around really quickly. And it's like, the world isn't going to end if I don't do it today, because in 3 or 4 days' time, I might feel exactly like doing it.
Absolutely. And you'll probably do a better job, and it will be done quicker than if you force yourself to do it at the time that you're not actually mentally in the zone to do it. It's so much control. It feels like you're releasing so much control, but you're actually getting a lot more control because you're planning, no, this is going to happen at the time that it feels best for me. I'm always telling my clients, you're building a business, not a job. You get to do this when it feels right for you and when you're having the most fun and enjoying it. If you're not enjoying something, sometimes there's things that we have to do. I mean, nobody loves doing their taxes, but we still have to have that stuff done. But there are times in the cycle where it will go faster. So if you allow yourself, okay, when do I actually want to do this? When do I actually feel good? Instead of panicking, it's totally shifting from a scarcity place around time and what you'll be able to do into that real abundance of enjoying the cycle.
I try, and it's not always possible, like you say, but I aim to do things like podcast recordings when I'm ovulating, because that's when I feel like I have the most energy. You could argue people are the most magnetic. So maybe people are going to enjoy having a conversation with me more during those times and all of that. But it's not an issue for me. I think I did 2 recordings yesterday plus client calls. I've got 3 recordings today. It's fine. At a different time of the month, I would be like, ugh, I don't have the energy to do that. So like I say, it's not always possible. If someone invites me on their podcast and their scheduler, isn't open at that time, I'm not going to be like, I can't, I can only do it those 3 days a month. But where possible, I try and move the things to make the most of that energy.
Yeah. And when it's not possible to control everything, you still can control other things around it. So say you get asked to do an interview, not at prime time for your cycle, but you do the interview. You'll probably bring realistic expectations to the rest of that day. You won't then look and say, okay, so now I'm also going to do these other, 6 to 10 high energy tasks. No, you've already done a high energy task. So maybe you're looking at a couple lower energy tasks. So you can still control what's happening around it. You can still make decisions to support yourself and show up for yourself in that to-do list, even when things don't line up perfectly for your cycle always.
And how do you track your cycle personally?
So I use the fertility awareness method. I was going to call it FAM, but that's
thank you for elaborating.
Yeah. So that is tracking my temperature. So I'm a huge believer in tracking your basal body temperature because that's letting you know if and when you're actually ovulating. You can use a period tracker, but going off of the last date of your cycle isn't the most accurate way to know when you're ovulating and when your next cycle will come. So when you track your temperature, your body temperature will spike at the point of ovulation, and then it drops on the day that your period will begin. So that's the way that I'm tracking my cycle. That's worked really well for me because I have had some different hormonal struggles. I haven't always had I've never been a 28-day on the dot kind of gal. I'm usually in the 34-day range, but it can fluctuate. That was what got me started on understanding this, was my own personal struggles with my hormonal wellness and not really being given a lot of options around feeling better. I just felt like, I had gone through some different things where I had ovarian cysts and then they would rupture and it was incredibly painful. And the option that I was given was to get on the pill, which I did. But even then I knew this isn't fixing anything really. And it wasn't. And I've always been a root cause person. I want to know, why is this happening and how can we stop it from happening instead of just slapping a Band-Aid on this. And I didn't feel good when I was on the pill. So I really started doing a ton of research around what is your cycle? What's actually happening? And through that is when I realized like, oh, you can actually use this for productivity. I've always been someone who loves to, get things done quicker or be able to accomplish more, but while also having fun. So yeah, because of having those hormonal fluctuations, period trackers weren't working for me. I wanted to know what was going on, and realizing that I could actually see when I was ovulating. And then when I was ovulating was letting me figure out which hormones were needing support. And then I was able to add in supplementation and different things and really feel like I was healing my body, because I was. So yeah, that's the way that I track, and that works really well for me.
So do you literally take your temperature daily?
I do, but I'm getting an Oura ring, so that way I don't have to anymore. I know, I spotted yours. I
love my Oura ring. I'll put the link in the show notes. I love my Oura ring.
Absolutely. And I use Natural Cycles is the app. And so they're linked up with the Oura ring now. So it'll literally be taken care of for you. And I find that that's the most reliable way to know when you'll get your cycle. And again, if you have hormonal fluctuations or things that you're dealing with, you can still cycle sync. A lot of times I'll see women saying like, I can't because my cycle's all over the place, or yeah, that doesn't work for me. There's that feeling of frustration, which I know so well, where it feels like everybody else has this perfect cycle and then you're just so miserable. But you still can. Your body you're still going to move through those cycles. They might just be a little longer, but by getting the data behind it, your cycle is a report card. And so your body can only tell you so many ways when something's off. It only has so many ways of communicating with you. And your cycle is one of the ways that it can communicate. So one of the books that really changed my life around understanding my cycle was The Period Repair Manual by Dr. Lara Briden. And I felt so stuck at the point that I found this book, and I saw all the reviews and people were like, this book changed my life. And I was like, how on earth is reading a book going to do anything about your period? I was so frustrated. But she goes through every single symptom that you could be having with your period, or things like PCOS, or what's going on with endometriosis. And what does that correlate to that your body's actually looking for? Sometimes it's an iodine deficiency. Sometimes it's magnesium. Sometimes your body's looking for GABA. Like there's all this stuff. So you felt like you had a manual on, okay, if this, then that. And then she also has a book called The Hormone Repair Manual, which is for women who are in perimenopause and up. So perimenopause can start as early as 35. And this is that stage before menopause. And then the book also covers how to support your hormones after menopause as well. So I highly recommend those books to help you feel like you have some control and some kind of a plan in order to support your body in this process.
Perfect. We'll drop those in the show notes as well. And you touched on it there. Synthetic hormones. If someone is taking the pill, if someone's got the IUD or the coil, as we call it here, that is the hormonal version, I know obviously it affects the way the hormones are throughout the cycle. Can people still apply this?
A little bit, but it won't be quite the same. If you're on the pill, you're not ovulating, and you're also not really having a real period. It's a withdrawal bleed. So the pill just changes so much about us. It's so much more than stopping your period. And now, they're starting to get some studies behind how it changes who we're attracted to. It changes our spatial recognition. It changes so much, because it's not just communicating with your ovaries. It has to change something in your brain in order for your ovaries to then not be ovulating. So there's a lot happening there, and it really does change a lot about how many things work in our body. So no, you're not really getting that same cycle. You may be able to track your own moods. I think everybody deserves to pay attention to their own personal cycles. We're talking before we started about how men move through a cycle on a daily basis. So everybody deserves to notice, are there times a day or certain things that are happening that are affecting you? And you can absolutely act on that and sync up with that. But it won't be true cycle syncing in the same sense of tracking. Like if you're on the pill, you're not ovulating, so you're not going to be tracking your temperature. And it is going to react with your body differently than your own natural rhythm.
So that's more of a case of self-awareness,
Yes.
tracking, how you feel and what's being presented to you rather than the hard data.
Exactly. Yeah.
Perfect. Well, Julia, thank you so much for coming and sharing all of that wisdom. I know just even in that short snippet, there's so much information that people are going to be able to take away if they want to have a dabble in cycle-syncing. And I hope that anyone listening does, because as I say, any way that we can preserve our energy, any way that we can optimize it for the better and enjoy the tasks that we're doing, then all the better. I'm going to pop all of your details in the show notes so people can find you in all the places online. But before you go, I'm going to ask you 2 questions. Firstly, do you have a book that you would recommend to my audience, which is going to help them in their quest to grow and scale their business?
Yes. So along Cycle-Synching, if we're looking to understand the why, I have 3 books I'd like to recommend. So one is The Period Repair Manual. The second is Beyond the Pill by Dr. Jolene Brighton. So if you're trying to understand how am I feeling, what can I do to support my body as you maybe are trying to reconnect with your own natural hormones, I really love that book. And then I am a huge believer that we need to read books for fun, even if we're trying to be productive and we want to enjoy it. Reading fiction books completely changed the way that I was able to imagine what people were going through and just enjoy my life and business. So little non-conventional twist there. I think everyone should read The Dutch House by Anne Patchett. It's one of my favorite fiction books of all time. And I highly recommend that you just go and read a book for fun and enjoy the reading process.
I love that. And I am someone that automatically gravitates towards another nonfiction book or to learn something. But as much as I do love fiction, when I find a good fiction book, I'm gone for days. I'm down in it. Like nothing's happening. I'm not leaving the house. So thank you for that. And lastly, before we wrap up, we've touched a little bit on, some of the mindset stuff that comes up as a result of hormones and that. But whilst you've been growing your business, what has been the biggest either mindset reframe or the biggest shift in belief and thought that's helped you really to succeed?
Definitely the idea that in order to do more, I need to do less. So often when, especially in the beginning stages of building my business, or just at those times where it feels like insurmountable, that this is going to go anywhere, that you'll be able to, build the website, do another thing or whatever, my go-to would be to push myself and to think like, okay, no, I need to do this. But it really was a matter of taking space away from things. Whenever I'm starting to feel that like push, I go and do something fun. So I actually step away from my business. I have very clear working boundaries. All my clients know I only work 2 days a week. And then everything else is for my life because I'm building a business for my life. So definitely that focus on, yes, I will be able to do more, but I'm doing it by doing less. So I always do this with my clients too, of like, what are you doing to have fun? When was the last time that you went and did something for your hobby? Because we don't need to be in our business 100% of the time. We need to be in our life. And then our business is the thing that's happening. And having that space allows you to show up in your business so well. So that was the biggest shift for me, is not that I need to be hustling in my business all the time, but I need to be having fun. And then my business will get to grow because I'm having fun.
I feel like that's a whole other episode that we could talk about with.
I'd love to.
With the separation. So I am going to leave it there. Thank you so much for sharing all of that wisdom. And it was so lovely to finally speak to you.
Thank you so much. It was wonderful.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Ambitious Introvert podcast with me, Emma-Louise Parks. If you enjoy this show, please subscribe, rate, and leave a review on iTunes. As a thank you, one lucky reviewer each month will win a 60-minute one-on-one coaching session with me, where you'll get the clarity and confidence to attract your ideal clients. And if you know someone who could benefit from listening to the show, then please do share and help me reach as many fellow ambitious introverts as possible.